My dad is atheist. He was brought up Catholic, but he is not religious in the slightest. He does not believe in God. And he talks all the time about how when he dies, he does not want any type of service. He wants all of his friends and family to like rent out a restaurant and just have great food, great drinks, a great time with one another. And I'm like, wow, I like can't wait for that. And people are like, oh, you can't wait for your dad to die. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it sounds fun.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too. Hello. It's been a week. Happy week to all, or sad week to y'all, depending on how we are feeling. I am feeling confused faced emoji because life is confusing. I had a couple dark nights of the soul last weekend, feeling very overstimulated after my play finished, after my birthday, after just dying on stage night after night. It's been a lot. So I asked my friend Brenna, who is a therapist, to come on and ask me some questions about the month of birthday and plays and death and birth and all of the things I like to discuss. Brenna Guinan is a licensed mental health counselor, certified rehabilitation counselor, and the host of the Real Fucking Talk podcast. She gets real and has deep, poignant, and sometimes comedic mental health conversations on her show. And most specifically is a therapist in day-to-day life, having clients IRL and on Zoom. She's on the East Coast, based out of New York. She is verified by Psychology Today because I'm looking at her Psychology Today profile. She specializes, but is not limited to, working with adults and teens who have lived through painful experiences that they find to be traumatic, generalized anxiety disorder, and individuals who have a traumatic brain injury. If therapy is something that you're interested in, feel free to call her and she'll happily answer any questions or concerns you have about the therapeutic process. 516-604-3851, extension 102. That's 516-604-3851, extension 102. I'm just so happy to have a therapist friend. I'm jealous. Really, this was my therapy of the day, but it felt nice to debrief about some of these heavier and bigger moments in my life as of late. So thank you, Brenna, for being here. And I can think of no better person to address the comedy and the tragedy of this past month than Brenna herself. So let's do the damn thing. I will be back next week with another interview. Thank you for being here and supporting. And as always, if you'd like to vent about your grief or anticipatory grief, please shoot me a DM at DyingOfLaughterPodcast on Instagram. Or just like share a fun fact. Tell me what's up with your life. It doesn't have to be dark, but it can be. Love you so much. All right, XOX. And as always, Yodo, you only die once. Thank you so much, Brenna, for coming and for interviewing me. It's always lovely to see you. Holla for $1 for being the host of Real Fucking Talk and being a therapist and coming on. Hey, girl, hey.
Babe, I just love ya. I am so excited for this.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a hoot. I feel like I've had some very heavy episodes lately about all of my episodes are kind of heavy because they're about death, but I feel like we're just going to have a light, fun, funeral-themed moment right now.
Love. I cannot wait to hear all about this. So you had a Jewish funeral-themed 30th birthday party that I was lucky enough to be invited to, but we do live across the country from one another. So I was unable to attend.
There was a 0.03% chance that you could attend. But the thing about life is you never know where people are going to be. And like, what if for some reason you were at like a wedding in town? Also, if you're at a wedding, then you couldn't have come to my birthday. So that doesn't even make sense. So basically it didn't make sense to invite you.
My favorite part though, was that the invitation had almost reminded me of like a wedding. Like, well, I'm also in wedding mode because we were just talking about that I'm planning my wedding, but
yes, you are, girl.
On wedding invitations, it says like Mr. and Mrs. blah, 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 request your presence at the wedding of their daughter. And your invite said Mr. and Mrs. Chelsea's dead dad, Lloyd, and her living mom, Susan, request your presence at the funeral of their daughter.
That is what the invitation said. It didn't make perfect sense, which is also very me because, okay, the confusing thing is my dad's name was Lloyd. I changed my last name to Lloyd over 10 years ago. So everyone in my professional life knows me as Chelsea Lloyd, but then I really wanted to have that vibe, but I couldn't just say Lloyd and Susan invite you because then they're like, who's Lloyd? So I had to clarify, but he's dead. But then people are like, is his name Lloyd? And I'm like, no. So it gets confusing.
Okay, so I don't know if I ever told you this, but I have always, for my 30th birthday, wanted to do a funeral themed birthday. So when you sent out this invite, I was like, we share the same brain. We are on the same wavelength. So how did you come up with this idea? And also, I want to know, like, why specifically was it a Jewish funeral? And tell me what is different about a Jewish funeral than like another funeral. I don't know.
Really love this. Also, I hope, well, up to you. I hope if and when you do go with this theme, then you can get some inspo from this moment, which your 30th will be, are you 28 or 29? I forget.
I'm 28, but I'm turning 29 in July. So it'll be next July.
Okay,
but
great.
I also have very low expectations for that because one of my main things that I want is a casket there. And my fiance just absolutely refuses to buy like a casket. He's like, that is like too far. And I was like, no, I definitely want the casket to be like the centerpiece of this room. And like, I want there to be a picture of me in there. I want people to go and like kneel down and like pray and like say a few words. So like, I just don't think he's going to follow through with that, but whatever. So all the more reason why I want to hear about yours.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, it will be tricky because you have your wedding this December. So for you doing a full blown out major birthday 6 months later, maybe trickier, but I hope, but you have options. Maybe you will go big or go home twice in a row. You could also do what I did, which was delay a year. So my 30th was in COVID. So this was actually 31. It was death to my 20s plus one. It made even less sense, but it was also hilarious because my 30th birthday was peak COVID. It was me and 5 friends cheersing a margarita in a beat down Mexican restaurant down the street. And it still haunts me. Like it was just so sad. It was just so sad. And one was pregnant and couldn't drink, and one was just got the vaccine and didn't know what was happening, and one person was like, it just, everything was off. Like it was just off. Okay, as for inspo for this, it's something I've always thought about, having a grief themed event. I do grief themed events here in Los Angeles, so it made sense to coincide with my birthday because you're more likely to get people to attend when it's around something. I think death to your 20s is a real thing. Grieving part of your youth. I mean, I think grief is a part of so much of what we do. And I know you understand that as a therapist, but even things like getting married, there's a grieving process. Like no longer being single is a grieving process. No longer being in your youth is a grieving process, right? So just implementing that. I didn't want this to be too intense. I do see myself doing an event in LA that is more intense about planning your funeral or learning about options and how you want to be taken care of in your afterlife. I wasn't going that far for a birthday, but I thought it was a fun and interesting way to get people to think about their own mortality, even subconsciously, and just have a fuck ton of food. So why was it Jewish? I mean, Jewish food is like my fave thing, and I always have to wait till like Great Aunt Myrtle to die in order to have it. So I was like, how do I get the food that I want? I do it this way, and I got the food that I wanted.
What food is at a Jewish funeral?
I love how we bonded over this of like our different religious backgrounds, which I think is cool. Like you can teach me cool things about Catholicism. Is that correct?
Girl, I cannot teach you shit about Catholicism. I am like fake. I was baptized and did all the things. I know nothing, not one thing.
I mean, I feel like you know some things, but we can discuss some Jewish foods of note: noodle kugel, lots of pickles, a sandwich bar, DIY bagels, things like Dijon mustard and Russian dressing. I don't even really like Russian dressing, but like just like the staples. Have you ever had kugel or matzah or stuff like that?
Okay, so yes, because when I was in grad school, I nannied for this family for like 5 years, like a little before grad school and then a little after. And they are Jewish. So always around, I want to say it's like Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Is that it? When
That's
you
the
like
thing.
have, yes.
You atone, yes, for sins.
Yes. She like they all got together at her house, her family. So she would always be the one like preparing the food and all the things. So also I love they always have this. I have no clue if this is like a Jewish thing or not. I think it is though. But it was like a jelly candy with like chocolate around it. Do you know what I'm talking about? And it looks like a circle.
What is that? I don't know. I actually don't know what that is.
I really think it's Jewish because it had like Hebrew on it.
Okay, that's a good sign. That's a good indicator.
It was so good though.
Wow, okay, great to know about this candy. Yeah, it was just the other things on the food, just a DIY bagel bar, right? So I catered from Wise Son, so it's like really fluffy, like amazing bagels with everything seeds, with poppy seeds, with sesame seeds, plain chocolate chip, blueberry, just every kind of bagel that you really, really love with like all the kind of veggies, thinly sliced, perfectly, lots of lox, different kinds of schmears. There was a toaster. It's just so cute, stuff like that. And then I also went to Costco for all the appetizers, which is quite Jewish of me. And I just had, just like, gotta save a little to spend a little, just had like so many madeleines and tarts and cookies and brownies and like chocolates and gouts and huge boxes of matzah everywhere and champagne and just like bellinis. Like it was basically brunch at night. And then I had a big old cake with berries and whipped cream. That's my favorite cake. That's not really related to death, but then it just said bye Chelsea, and we ate the bye cake, and I had balloons that said BYE everywhere and signs that just said bye. So the theme was really bye.
At least it said bye and not like RIP. Like I feel like that would be a little too overboard. So I like the bye.
Correct. It just kind of got across what we needed to get across. There were also custom M&Ms that had photos of me as a baby in a Barney hat at my Barney birthday. And then Yodo was one of the mottos of the M&Ms, which stands for "You Only Die Once," which is what I say on my podcast, and also M&Ms that said "bye." So that was the party favor. I also got signs from Vistaprint. So if anyone listening is also considering this theme, there's like 3 of them out there. Hello, whoever you are. Yeah, I got signs from Vistaprint. If you ordered in advance, super cheap. Don't wait till the last minute. Then you can get a nice big old sign for any theme birthday too. I highly recommend Vistaprint, and then custom M&Ms I think for any event is really cute. If you buy in bulk, it's not super expensive. Again, if you rush ship, it is, which I've sometimes been guilty of. But yeah, it was just like signs, food, M&Ms. I did rent out a space. So like I actually got an event space for this, not because I necessarily wanted to, but just where I live is like tall and skinny. There's not really like one big room. I think like big cities in LA, New York, you guys might feel me. There's not really one good place for a party. And I was like, I just want to be relaxed. And I went to this amazing event space for Friendsgiving that someone did. It was indoor, outdoor. Also, we're not peak COVID, but with COVID adjacent, having indoor, outdoor, I think made people feel better because I wanted to invite a lot of people and not be stressed by that. So I rented a space called the Hollywood Hidden House. Highly recommend. It is gorgeous. I don't know if I would rent a space again because it's expensive. Like that was questionable, but you know, you only turn 30 plus 1, aka 31 twice.
And you only die once.
And you only die once. Do you have a concise response to what is your goldfish moment? The first time you thought about or conceptualized death in some way. Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
Yes. So the first time I can remember, like, I guess like thinking about death was my grandpa died when I was 5. And I remember vividly my parents came into my room after they'd put me to bed. And like my mom was crying, but my dad was okay. It was my mom's dad. And my mom through tears was like, Grandpa died. And I just remember like feeling so confused, being like, what the fuck what's died? Like what? And then they tried to explain it to me with like kid gloves on. And they were like, oh, he went to heaven and he's asleep forever now. And I remember feeling like very like, all right, he's going to bed. Like, cool. So I remember feeling like very unfazed. And I think that is the polar opposite of like what normal people do. I feel like normal kids have so many questions. And I remember like my parents kept asking me like, do you have any questions about this? And I was like, no, what the fuck? You guys said he was going to bed. Like, who cares? So yeah, I was like very not affected or didn't understand. But yes, that was definitely my first like goldfish moment of learning about it. But I think my first like questioning of death and like really thinking about it was later in elementary school, because I remember I had a couple of classmates that like lost grandparents around the same time. And I remember being like, oh, that happened to me. And like then they would come back to school and they were upset. And I was like, oh, when I was 5 or 6, I wasn't super close with my grandpa, I think then I was like, oh, my grandparents that I do still have can go away. Like, that's crazy. So I guess technically it would be like 5th-ish grade.
Thank you for sharing those examples. And what's so interesting, just to reflect back to you, is, well, I love how you said normal kids. First of all, I'm sure, no such thing as normal. And I'm sure there's someone listening that's like, oh, I was like that too. So thank you for your honesty, but also full circle moment to you being a therapist and being able to hold space for people on a regular basis on very deep and dark subjects. How fascinating that at that age you were like, yeah, I can hold that space. Like, yes, you didn't fully understand, but you were like, yeah, like I'm in this, like I got you. You've always been able to take and listen to deep and dark things, which is so fascinating.
Yeah, I really have. I've never like thought about that, but now that I'm doing like a quick scan of things that happened, like, yes. I have a question. You were saying before that, I forget what you were talking about. You were talking about how in the future you want to eventually like do like meetings or something in order to prepare for death and all this stuff. So I want to know if, because of your experience, but also because of this like party planning and the theme of the party, have you been thinking more about like death and specifically your death recently?
Yes. What is my relationship to my own mortality? One wonders. Well, I think because of my pod every week, it does allow me to think more deeply about my own funeral planning and death. That said, similarly to your own podcast, perhaps you relate, it almost becomes like second nature. So it is sometimes more rare to go deeper. Like, it's like for you, like you're a therapist, you're always thinking about mental health. But then sometimes, how often are you really deeply thinking about your own happiness? I mean, maybe your answer is every single day, and I hope that it is. But does that make sense? Or do you? Do you think about your own happiness every day?
I do. I really do check in with myself and like, ask myself, how am I feeling today? Where am I feeling that feeling? Stuff like that. But I feel like it's almost, I agree with you that they're similar, but I also feel like they're worlds apart.
Right. Yeah, that was me trying to relate, and you're like, that's not relatable. So, look, I think more so than actually thinking about my funeral specifics, I find myself often thinking about, am I happy with the way that I'm showing up in the world? Am I happy with how things are going personally and professionally? Because as someone in the arts and as a comedian and as all of these things that are extremely competitive, one may argue one of the most competitive professions on earth is being an artist. Yes and no, depending on how you look at it, but just because so many people want to do it, I have to constantly check in. Because if I'm miserable, if you're miserable, whoever's listening, and you're constantly being upset by the rejection, you're not happy with how many times you're hearing no from your auditions, from your shows, then that's not a healthy way to live. So for instance, with my auditions that I send in exclusively almost self-tape at this point, you might hear back about one from every like 50 to 70. You might book 1 out of 100, and you might get a call back 1 out of every like 20 or 30. So like weeks go by and I hear nothing. Or when I pitch myself for stand-up shows, more than no, you often just get nothing, which is even more degrading sometimes. It's like they didn't even open your email. There's not even a chance. And it's really easy to feel very, very down about that. So I'm constantly checking in like, well, I am living my dreams, but if I'm ever starting to feel too low or too negative or or too just unwell by the whole thing, I have to check back in, go back to therapy and or go for more walks, volunteer more, check in with my friends outside the business. It's just constantly checking yourself, because we all know those artists and those people that are always complaining, they're unhappy, they're not feeling like they're moving forward, they're not growing, they're not succeeding. And I'd say to those people, well, anyways, I was just saying it's important to me to constantly check in, because I've had very low times in my career. And if you're always low, you either need to take a break or do something else, because why are you constantly complaining and being negative? So that's something I think about all the time.
I'm actually happy that you brought that up, because I don't know if I ever told you, my friend who's like childhood home that I'm actually staying in right now, she works in film, and she just finished this film that she's been writing that's based off of her life. Her best friend 4 years ago died by suicide, and she has been essentially writing like the last couple times that they hung out and like making it into a short film. And just last week, she finished filming it. And we were on the phone talking about it. And she was saying that it really is almost like grieving, because for so long, this person that she lost was still alive in her writing. And, you know, she always got to think about, oh, I'm going to make this movie. And, you know, now it's really final that like, okay, the movie's done and I did it. So I wonder if you can relate to that, because I know that you're in a play right now and you die in the play. So is that something that you can relate to?
Yes. Thank you for sharing about your friend. Do you mind me asking, what was her friend's name who died by suicide?
Ryan.
Shout out to Ryan. That's really beautiful that there's a story being told about Ryan. Was your friend playing Ryan, or did she cast someone else to play Ryan?
She cast someone else to play Ryan, and she also cast someone else to be herself.
Okay.
So
good.
She was able to almost like watch herself.
Wow.
She actually got the phone call like when she was here in her house in her foyer. So like she, you know, redid that. And she was saying that filming these scenes or directing these scenes was really hard for her, but also like so incredibly therapeutic.
Wow, that's really interesting. I definitely would like to see that when it goes to festivals or whatever. Also, I'm like, should I know her? Should I be in touch with her? I love people making films and things.
I know. Yes, I'll connect you. She produces my pod.
Oh, she produces your pod. Okay, so cool. Well, definitely would love to know more about her. And yes, that is something I relate to. So in this play, this playwright wrote a play about the loss of his sister, Anna Land, who was a comedian that died by suicide in 2018. Grinding in the LA comedy scene, much like I am. And so thinking about someone that could have been anyone I knew, I actually know people that knew her. I did not personally know her. And seeing her photos, and I was cast based on I do look like her, I have similar mannerisms to her, etc. When I have to go into the dark place, when I die in the show, it gets really dark to think about, well, yeah, like she was one of us artists grinding, and the LA scene is really brutal. All that to say, I don't know her personal story with mental health, and she was addicted to alcohol, and that is part of the story. And it's very complex. It's very beautiful. It's very poignant. I think it's really cathartic and therapeutic and important when people like her brother and your friend do honor these losses with artistic projects. That to say, certainly that's not for everyone to do something like that, but I find it really brave and courageous. And it's been a really unique way into exploring mental health, addiction, suicide, and grief by bringing this story to life on stage.
So what is the best part about either being in this play or like specifically playing this character?
I would say the best part or most interesting part is getting to play a real person, because I feel that that's not something I've necessarily done before. You know, like when I'm doing film and television, I'm often cast in the smaller roles for now, who are not the leads carrying on these stories. When you think about people playing a real person, it's like celebrities in these movies, these biopics, something like that. But this was a cool taste of what that could be like, researching someone specifically. And opening weekend was last weekend. Her family flew out from around the country to come from Georgia, from Colorado, you know, from the East Coast, from Northern California. And they've been hearing about this play for years, as her brother has been working on the play for years. And what was most rewarding was talking with them after, as well as the most challenging, because it was heavy, but it was amazing, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And I'm happy you brought up, you know, speaking to them after, because the next question that I wanted to ask you is, I am totally not an actor or like in that field of work at all, but from, you know, friends and just people I know in general that work in the film industry, in any of that, I know that they can feel those things so deeply, because not that I do any of that, but when I'm in a session with a client and holding space for that person and they're going through their shit, I know that I'm really affected by it. So I'd love to ask, like, what it's like for you after a play or like a rehearsal or any of that. Does that stick with you?
Yes, I would say it changed day to day. There were some rehearsals where I was able to really disconnect myself and just focus on the comedic aspect of her comedian journey and how much she loved being in the scene. And then there were moments after rehearsals where I was focusing specifically on my last monologue, which is, you know, the big reveal as to how much my mental health was struggling. And the way they do it in the play, I mean, spoiler alert, I don't think anyone at this point is going to see it because this will come out after the run. But the family gathers around and they're like, oh my gosh, we found this video of Elise. Like, this was her last stand-up show before she died. Like, and this one cousin's like, we found it. And the mom's like, I don't want to see it. And the brother's like, we have to see it. And his girlfriend's like, I don't know if we should see it. Like, should we watch this video? And then they all gather around their phone. And then it cuts to me doing the monologue, AKA my stand-up set, where I just break down and I talk about what the fuck is the point of living? And that's the heaviest part. And just getting there has been really, it's been really rough, but I also am grateful for the opportunity. I feel like I've gotten one step a little bit closer to understanding what it's like to be in that dark of a place. Of course, I will never understand what it's like to be directly impacted by suicide until I myself have a friend or family member, knock on wood that I do not, but I just interview people on my show who have lost their siblings by suicide. And again, of course, I do not understand. I will not pretend to, but feeling one step closer to connecting with how heavy and indescribable that is has been really challenging, but beautiful.
So it sounds like there's some days that, you know, you're able to compartmentalize and you're fine. And then there's other days that it really sticks with you. So yes. I guess what I'm wondering is, overall, how would you say that this play has impacted or affected your mental health, if at all?
Yes, it has. It's just, I mean, the positives is it's gotten me excited about, I want to do this kind of work even more deeply. Like, I feel even more connected to wanting to make art specifically that addresses mental health. I've always known that, but I feel like what's happening with my podcast and my career in comedy are becoming closer and closer to being intersected. Granted, there are things about them that are very separate, but the more and more they come closer together gets me excited, because that's what I love about art, telling stories around grief, around cancer, around mental health. This felt like a step in the right direction. And I think even in the audition and the callbacks, like, you know, the director was interested that I had that interest, and it was synchronistic that I did look and act like her. And he won this grant from a mental health organization, so he was able to pay everyone in the production, which a lot of theater in LA is unpaid. Not that it's about that, but this was like a really cool experience just through and through. And I'm grateful. I don't know how to explain it really, but it's been really cool.
When I'm, you know, running through my head now of movies or TV shows that, you know, have a scene or, you know, a season that focuses on death or an illness or something, what's coming to mind for me is that most of the time these stories have like happy endings, like the person's cancer is cured, or like, you know, all of this stuff. And it sounds like this play is more real life. And I'm wondering, is that more of the work that you want to do? Like the real life shit, like shit doesn't always end up working out and being happy.
Yes. Well, thank you for bringing that up because I do feel that a lot of stories on film and television do wrap up into these little neat bows for the sake of storytelling that are not indicative of real life. So what's complex is, yes, I'm of course very interested in the real life experience. However, as comedy is my main thing that I do, the comedic ways of addressing it are less intense, honestly. However, they're just as important, and I think they can get a lot of people on board who just can't go there in a deeper way. If you've seen Dead to Me, I really liked how they address death comedically. Have you seen Dead to Me?
No, I didn't. Is that on Netflix?
It is. I think you would like it.
Okay, I actually am looking for a new show to watch, so I'm going to start that tomorrow.
Okay, it's good. It's like a comedic, I think it's a brilliant way to address death comedically. Is it day-to-day perfect real life? No, but if you're going to have a comedic angle, that's a high standard, right? Because it does address some heavy things, and yet then it also gets funny and weird. So dramatically, this play was very, very heavy and dramatic, so it was more indicative of real life. I do think it's hard for people to hold that. So I can see why something like a television show that needs to go on and on and on needs to have lightness. You know, this is a 2-hour play that people are going to see once. So yeah, we really, really go there. But like, if you're going to watch it every week, it might be a lot. Like in the end, I die and everyone's sad and they're pissed. And like, it does wrap up there are happy moments, but like not really. Like it's like, oh, fuck. She died, and then, you know, her brother has a baby, and he's like, I wish you could have met her. And he has this whole speech about like, she reminds me of you. And, you know, her brother did have a baby in real life that does remind him of her. And yeah, after, what I was most surprised by was like all the family coming up to me, and they were all like, oh my gosh. Like, I'm of course different being than her, but there are very similar mannerisms. Like I thought maybe 1 or 2 people might say that to like be nice or have an epiphany, but it was like 10 or 15 people being like, oh my gosh. Like one uncle was like, can I like take a photo with you? Someone else was like, oh my gosh, like, can I tell you this poem that I wanted to tell her? Like it was very intense, and I did not expect that.
What was that like for you? I imagine that was really overwhelming, but also really confusing, because it's like, I'm sure you know more than most that like having that closure, even if it's really not with the person that you want, is so therapeutic. Just like my friend who had the closure watching a film she directed and wrote happen, although she didn't have these conversations with her friend Ryan. You know, it's what she wished she could have done. It's what she wished she asked. So that was really therapeutic for her. So I guess putting that into perspective of this play, it must be really therapeutic for her family members to read you something or take a picture with you or give you a hug. But how was that for you?
It was beautiful. Like it was, I feel like I do have the emotional capacity to go there. So that's good, as you know, because I'm so immersed in grief. But I could see for someone else it might be really overwhelming. I think I was just so surprised. Like I just am like, you know, you lost this person who, again, let's be clear, is very different than me and is her own person. And of course I'm like nothing exactly like her. Like, of course, but it was just surprising that so many people looked me in the eye and you could just see it in their eyes. Like, oh my gosh, like this is weird. And they also dressed me like her, like she always wore a fedora and I wore a fedora. So there was things like that. But no, looking her mom in the eye, like that was a really unique experience of her mother just being like, hi, I'm Anna's mom. I was like, hi, how are you feeling? And what a unique experience for them to see a story about their life told on stage. Like how many people actually do see their life stories, even if fictionalized, in a film or a play? Meant very few, it seems.
Yeah. I can't imagine what that was like for you.
It was powerful. Well, thank you for asking.
So I have a question. Were you rehearsing for this play while you were planning your funeral themed birthday party?
Yes, it was a lot of grief, heavy things happening at once. They were back to back. So my birthday party was the week before the play opened. So within 7 days, we had April Fool's Day, which I'll just throw in there as a comedic moment, my actual birthday, my birthday funeral party, my mom's actual birthday, who has cancer, the anniversary of my dad's death, and then opening night of Blaze was all within 1 week. So it was a lot happening.
That's a fucking lot. So I guess I want to know, we talked about what it was like planning this party, and, we talked about what it was like preparing for the play and all of that stuff. But I want to know what it was like to do it all together, because both of those things feel like really big things on their own. So to do them both at the same time, like, what was that like?
First of all, it was stressful. I did have moments being like, why the fuck did I plan this party the week before the play? But, that was the actual weekend of my birthday. And then I knew I was going to have all these play dates on the weekend. So it really just was the weekend to do it. And I was like, okay. And I want to do it. And I always saw myself doing something for my 30th. Again, not even because I really care about birthdays or I'm obsessed with birthdays. I actually have a lot of stand-up material about I'm desperately seeking the confidence of a girl who celebrates her birthday month. Like how that's a whole thing. Like, I'm like, girl, why the fuck are there 4 events? Like, are you getting married or are you just turning 32? Like, what's happening?
Literally. It's always the most irrelevant age too. It's like, yes. 38. What? No one, shut up. Just do an even number, like 30, 35, 40, 45. No one gives a shit about 42. No one gives a shit about 27.
Right. And that's why, so I make fun of myself of like, I swear to God, I'm not a person obsessed with birthdays. But that said, birthdays really interest me because people have such strong opinions about them. People either like, I do nothing, I don't care at all, who gives a fuck, or people do like a big old to-do. Sure, there's things in the middle, but I feel that people tend to have uniquely strong opinions one way or the other, and that interests me. So I am of the belief that let's do something, especially for the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, because there's only so many milestones you have in your entire life, if you look at it that way. So if you're not doing something, you're doing yourself a disservice in that you're not honoring who you are and the life that you have lived. Unless, of course, you're like my boyfriend who's introverted is like, I would never want to do anything. That sounds horrible. But again, what's that about, right? So I'm like, let's just do something, because on the years that I don't, I'm kind of like, it's just passing me by. Especially with COVID, I hadn't done a birthday party in 2 years. So it just felt like the right time.
I wonder if we sound almost like hypocritical or like not making sense, because in the beginning of recording, I remember you saying like, life is so important and life is to be lived, and, life is so short and blah, blah, blah. And I think that really stems from you experiencing death, in the form of your father. And, I'm sure you've lost other people, and now putting that into your work. And I'm sure that it's kind of always in the forefront of your mind that like life is so short. Life is to be celebrated. Life is to have fun with your friends and your family. So that kind of, I'm with you. I was just shitting on people who celebrate irrelevant birthdays, but also like, why the fuck not celebrate an irrelevant birthday? We don't know if you're going to be here for the next one.
There you go. Well, I understand what you mean about the hypocritical sense, in that on the one hand, like, it's not about calming the fuck down. It's just about, there is a comedic element to people that go like super all out. But you know what? If you are one, we support you. Hey, maybe we have something to learn from them, right? But I think especially milestones, like you said, like 20, 25, 30, 35. Because I'm like, I don't know, on my next milestone birthday, I could have a fucking kid or something. Like, that's just a whole other part of life. So let's fucking rent out a venue, cater this damn shit, send out the invitations, ask the guests to wear black, and call it a damn day.
So speaking of guests, I want to hear how your friends and family and attendees of this funeral-themed birthday, how did they feel about it? Specifically, how did your mother feel about this?
Great question about my mom. Well, my mom's interesting in that she has had time to come to terms with the fact that I'm interested in grief and death, because it's been years since I've been doing this now. At first, she was like, what the fuck are you talking about? But she's come around. And I also think part of me being obsessed with all of this is because growing up in my household, we did not address the fact that my mom had breast cancer and my dad was paralyzed because he had ALS. And it was just so awkward and no one said anything.
No one talked about it.
No, it was just like, I mean, on the one hand, it became normal for us because they both had it for a long time. So how much can you always go there? But looking back, I'm like, if you have a bald parent on the one hand and a wheelchair-bound parent on the other hand, like, let's please address. Like, so it kind of bit my mom in the ass that she never talked about it because now I talk about it every fucking day. So she's used to it at this point.
That is hysterical. Okay, so sounds like your mom is like accepted and warmed up to this.
She was invited. Like, she was on the guest list. I was like, girl, you might be traumatized, but you can come, girl. Like, you can come.
I mean, kind of payback. Like, she traumatized you. Now your turn to traumatize her. It's whatever. So how did your friends respond?
I mean, I think that'd be cool to like ask them. I'm like, hey friends, what do you actually think? I think people thought it was funny. I mean, I got a lot of like replies to the paperless post being like, girl, you crazy, like stuff like that. But again, I think like my close friends, they all know how I feel about death at this point. I think I would say it was like 30% close friends, 30% people who I know from comedy and grief that have at least heard me talk about this, and then 30% newer friends or people who didn't know. So like there was a chunk of people that were like, wait, what? Wait, what the fuck? Are you okay? Like, what's happening? Should we be concerned? But the majority were like, oh yeah, Chelsea does this. Like, she's unwell, and we already know that.
I would like clarification on the pictures that you put on the invitation. So the only one that I can say for sure I understand is a childhood picture of you.
You know, it was a little random. So one photo is a birthday of me at my Barney birthday. And my mom told me that I hated my Barney birthday. I was crying the whole time. I was...
You look like you hated it.
Yeah. So maybe I secretly hated life and death from the very beginning. So that's just like my classic birthday photo that goes on invitations. The other photo was honestly, truly just a photo of me dressed as Superwoman that was on my desktop.
Wait, that's you?
Oh, you didn't know that was me?
Chelsea, that literally does not look like you.
Wait, what if the whole time no one realized that was me?
Chelsea, that does not look like you. I was just going to ask what actress that is. Like, I thought that this was like a famous actress, not saying you're not, but I thought that this was like a clip from a movie.
Oh my gosh, that's so random. That's hilarious. Okay, no, that's me.
That does not look like you.
That was me. I was playing Wonder Woman in a parody for the Warp Zone comedy sketch group last year. Like, they have this viral channel, and I was like, I do not look like Gal Gadot. Like, I refuse. And they were like, it's a comedy. You're fine.
You do in this.
in that. Well, makeup. And she's Israeli, and I'm Jewish, so I feel like they're like, well, you're the Jewish you're the comedy version of her. I was like, that works. That checks out. So that's me. And then one photo is of a ghost, like a woman running into the forest, very ghostly, which is a little creepy and disturbing. And one of them is like a famous Shiva from this movie that I like. And I was like, it's Shiva comedy theme. What the fuck is it called? Adam Driver Shiva. I'm looking up right now. This is Where I Leave You. That's what it's called.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So singing Shiva is a Jewish funeral tradition. So I was like, let's put a little Shiva, a little comedy, a little birthday. And the Wonder Woman was just on my desktop. And I was like, I don't care. I'm lazy. And I look really kind of confused. And the whole thing was confusing. So that sort of worked.
It almost looks like you as Wonder Woman is like giving the side eye to you as a baby, being like, bitch, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yes, that was the vibe. It was a commentary on me eye rolling to myself. So that's subconsciously what's being picked up on. Thank you for noticing.
Oh my God. So another question I have is, would you do a party like this again, or would you recommend this theme for other people?
Well, I was totally laughing because, well, it's not funny, but I was doing errands the day of. I was getting balloons, last minute catering, Party City. Like, I had black balloons, the whole thing, black confetti. And I was like driving around in my car with all these black balloons, shielding my vision, and I was like being very careful. I was like, I mean, I can't accidentally like not fucking make it to my funeral. Like, can you imagine being that girl that like she died on the way to her funeral? I mean, great TikTok article, but like we can't have that. So that was alarming.
Could you fucking imagine?
I mean, like, no. I was like actually a little scared. I had like some superstitious thoughts. I was like, this is terrifying. So that crossed my mind. I also had thoughts of like, well, I mean, I really can't ever do this again. I mean, at this point, I already am one of the only people that will ever have 2 funerals, but 3? I mean, can you imagine 3? I mean, it's not past me. Look, it's not past me, but it isn't coming up anytime soon, I will say.
I can see you doing it for like your 50th,
right?
But like upgrading it, like
right.
Doing something different. Maybe we could do a different kind of funeral, maybe like a Catholic funeral, maybe an
sure.
Irish funeral where all they do is drink and laugh and avoid the actual death.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. Well, I'm not Catholic, but I love that. Maybe that's what yours should be because you're Catholic. That's funny.
That is what all of my family funerals are.
Yeah.
I say all the time, and people look at me like I have 5 heads. My dad is atheist. So he was brought up Catholic, but he is not religious in the slightest. He does not believe in God. And he talks all the time about how when he dies, he does not want any type of service. He wants all of his friends and family to like rent out a restaurant and just have great food, great drinks, a great time with one another. And I'm like, wow, I like can't wait for that. And people are like, oh, you can't wait for your dad to die. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it sounds fun.
Yeah. Love that. I'm just saying it sounds fun. Well, I do like the idea of a celebration of life, and good for him for having that clarity, because above all else, one of my goals is just for people to have some semblance of an idea of how they want the rest of their lives to be and how they want their funeral to be. So if that's what you want, fuck yeah. Like, and how cool that your dad will be able to be honored in the way that he so chooses. And there isn't just a fuck ton of guesswork, because that's kind of on the darker side of my podcast episodes that we explore, is when you just have no idea what the person wanted. It's an extra level of stress of like, what are we doing? And should we do a prayer? And did they want a poem, or did they want it funny? Or like, what pictures did they want? So I think it's actually a gift you can give yourself and your friends and family to have some semblance of clarity. And there's a site called Lantern. I've had the founder on my website. Lantern is a site where you can log in and write down all of these wishes and thoughts about your own death. And then you can give the password. I don't know what happens next. Maybe you give the password to your mom. No, that sounds traumatizing. Or you could just write it down on a piece of paper and like shove it in your sock drawer. I don't know.
I love that. So you just said like the importance of how you want to live your life in the future and all of that. So with all of this death and dying and grief talk, how do you want to live the rest of your life?
I would like to live the rest of my life with integrity and with knowing that I put forth my best efforts to achieve my hopes and dreams personally and professionally. I think one of the saddest aspects of anyone's end of life could be thinking of regrets, could be thinking of the dreams that you never fulfilled. And to a point, we're all human. We all will have some regrets, sure, but I'm proud of myself in that. Or I don't like saying I'm proud of myself. Well, maybe I should.
Why?
Okay. I don't know. Okay. Well, that's
what?
Okay.
No, we are proud of ourselves.
Okay. No, I'm like, what's cool is when my dad died, when I was 19, it did dramatically shift the course of my life, understandably, in that I pursued life as an artist from the day I turned 22 and graduated. Whereas I think some people, it takes years to finally admit to yourself that you might want to do something. I really did shift the career that I was going towards, which I thought maybe I would do something behind the scenes in the film biz. Would I have made a lot more money doing that? Absolutely. I had like 7 internships. I was crushing it. I was like already had really cool job offers, but I was just like, no, and no, because you live one time. And my dad was very, very work oriented and a lawyer and not necessarily happy doing that. And it's like, no, this is actually what I want. And that's really cool that Am I where I thought I'd be? Absolutely not. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Did I think I would have broken in by now in a more serious way? Yes, I did. But I'm still here. I'm showing up. I'm enjoying it. I'm pursuing my dreams. And that's something that I hope I don't ever lose track of, even when the going gets rough. Because let me tell you, girl, it can get real rough of months on end with like, what the fuck am I doing? And I hope that anyone listening can take one small step towards achieving something they're hopeful about personally or professionally, because that's so important. How would you like to live the rest of your life, Brenna?
Well, before I go into me, I just want to say that I really, really commend and respect that is something that you hold so close to your heart, that like you're not going to settle just for a job that offers you money and security. You really want to follow your dreams. I'm thinking of one client I have whose husband just got his like dream job, and he's working like 12 to 13-hour days. And before he started, they were arguing a lot because he just wasn't happy with what he was doing. He was on his phone a lot at home, all of this stuff. And to be honest, my assumption of what was going to happen when he started this job was that he was going to be working way longer hours. He was going to come home exhausted. They were still going to keep fighting. But I am so happy to say that I was so wrong, because he is so jazzed about what he's doing that he comes home every day, and yes, he's exhausted, but he is like so excited to be doing what he wants. And he comes home wanting to spend time with his family and excited to do that. So I think that is such an underrated gift that we really should all be giving ourselves. Like, follow your dreams, do what you want to do.
And thank you for sharing that example. I think that's awesome. And especially like longer hours doesn't necessarily lead to X, Y, or Z if you're happy. That said, let's also be clear. A lot of people's dreams are expensive or financially not feasible. So it's not about necessarily jumping into something right away that you can't do or can't afford. But I think there are some people who maybe never even move to the part of the country that might be closer to their dreams, or they don't even pursue something on the side or for fun, or like they don't even take a class in the thing they're excited about. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I just hope that people can live their lives with integrity. Of course, make enough money to get by wherever possible. That's its own complicated issue. America, get your shit together. But to even admit to yourself what your dreams might be is a very brave thing that not everyone does.
100%.
What comes to mind as a therapist, you are holding space for people every single day and honoring their mental health. How do you honor your own, and how do you want to show up each day?
I honor myself and my own mental health by, like I said earlier, like I definitely do check-ins with myself multiple times a day and really connect with myself and my body. How am I feeling? Where am I feeling that? What can I do to alleviate that if it's a feeling that I don't really want to feel? Spending time in nature, moving my body in a way that feels really good for me, which for me is hot yoga, Pilates, long ass walks, but also like downtime and intentional rest. You know, I say all the time that just because you're laying on the couch watching TV, it doesn't necessarily mean you're resting. If your mind is thinking about all the shit that you need to do and all the shit that you could be doing, you're not really getting the rest that you want. So intentional rest is actually productive. But how I want to live the rest of my life, I really love making everyone I meet feel like a someone, like they're important. I think that is so important, to feel really seen and heard. I definitely want to continue and improve on listening skills and making people feel, again, like heard, seen, important, valued, all of those things. I think that is so important, but also to call myself out on my shit. I know that I'm a person that'll say like, oh, we'll do that another time, or like whatever. Even planning my honeymoon, I was talking to my fiance. I've always wanted to go to Greece, but Greece in December is cold. So we're very much beach people. So we wanted to go somewhere else. And neither of us have ever been to Hawaii, but Hawaii from New York is about a 12 to 14-hour flight. And I caught myself saying to him, like, that's just a really long flight. Like, let's just go to Aruba. It's like 4 hours. And he was like, if you don't want to take a long flight for our honeymoon, like, when do you want to take a long flight? And I was like, yeah, that's a great point. Like, I'm very much that person that's like, oh, let's just do something easier. It's closer. It's less travel or whatever. When really, like, why wouldn't I want to travel and see things? Like, I do want to travel, but I want to travel the least amount of time, if that makes sense. But also, like, fuck, that's what life is about. Like, take the 14-hour trip and go to Hawaii on your honeymoon,
That's such a good point, and I love that you're calling yourself out on your shit, girl. Well, let me know where you end up. Well, where are you at mentally with the decision? Are you still in flux? Are you leaning towards Aruba or Hawaii or Greece? Where does your decision stand as of now?
So Greece is for sure out. We did like agree that we will go to Greece. But when I'm going to Greece, I want to be like laying out and I want to be walking around and I don't want to be cold.
Sure.
So I think that we are still deciding. Honestly, it'll really come down to like prices of things. But yeah, honestly, neither of us have ever been to both Aruba or Hawaii. So I think that either way, it'll be fun. But also, I know that I've shared this with you and you are going to release an episode with my fiance's sisters, but my fiance's dad passed away in 2001 and his parents went to Aruba on their honeymoon. So there's also that like piece of me that's like, that would be so nice. So I don't know, really could go either way.
Wow. Well, I cannot wait to know. And like you said, both of them are fantastic. You cannot go wrong, girl. Like, what a journey. And I have recs and thoughts if you do go to Hawaii. I have not been to Aruba. I'm excited for your honeymoon, regardless of what happens. Nothing can be worse than one of my best friends just had her honeymoon in St. Lucia. It rained all day, every single day. He is in the Navy, so they rarely see each other as it is. And he had an allergic reaction the first night and went to the hospital and then was like inflamed and couldn't like eat and drink. And it was just like pouring rain every single day. So it can't be worse than that. Also, love you to my friend. If you're listening, I'm so sorry.
Not to prolong this, but I was talking to a family friend about her wedding. She's like my parents' age, but she was saying that when she got married, she wanted, again, like most of us want for their honeymoon, like a beach vacation, tropical, so nice, yada, yada. And she researched like the best place to go in December, like all these things. And it kept coming up as Jamaica. Like Jamaica rarely gets rain in December, all this stuff. She went for 2 weeks and they had a rare tropical storm and it rained every single fucking day.
No. Oh my gosh. I know.
Could you imagine?
Well, no, but the thing I can relate to is this past 4th of July, Corey and I actually went to Hawaii on a Costco deal. We're like so annoying, but
okay.
Costco has incredible Hawaii deals. Don't get it twisted. You go for 3 or 4 nights, includes the flights. You're paying a fraction of what you would pay, and it's fantastic. I would recommend it to anyone. It's also 5 hours from LA, so it's a lot closer. But we went to Hawaii for 4th of July, which is like prime time of the year. And there was also a rare storm and it rained. And I will say, even if your attitude is good, it was worse than I thought because everyone is so miserable. Like no one, like, the people you meet and talk to, they're all tourists and on vacation and they want to have a good time and they paid money. So you're like, well, at least let's like talk to new people. And then they're pissed. And then all the activities are outdoors. Like these islands don't have like many things to do inside. And the ones that do, including the spas, book up instantly. So you're literally like, oh shit. So I feel for your family friend and for my friend on her honeymoon. Cause you're like, even if you want to make it work, like Europe, you can make it work. There's tons to do and like restaurants and museums. These islands are like, there's nothing to do, man.
I know. And she even was saying like, she purposely did it for like 13 or 14 days because she was like, even if it rains like
2 or
3 days, like most of the time it'll be fine. Literally every single day.
No. Oh my gosh. Okay. Those people are going to have good karma in something else in their life. Okay. To end the episode, Brenna, I like to ask my guests about a birthday tradition or something fun or interesting to you in relation to your birth. We have already kind of covered that, but if you have a brief example as to how you celebrate your birthday situation.
Love that.
Is there a tradition or thought around your birthday that comes to mind?
I will say I used to be the person that was like, fuck a birthday. Like my birthday is July 2nd. So it's very close to the 4th of July. A lot of people are traveling. A lot of people have plans. So I was very much that person that was like, who gives a shit? No one can celebrate anyway. But I will say, as I've gotten older, specifically the last like 5 or 6 years, I've made it a point to celebrate my birthday, and not in like that annoying, like over the top way that we were talking about, but like, you know, just last year for turning 28, like I just had an open bar at like a rooftop bar in my town, and I invited friends and I was like, hey, if you can make it, come. If not, no worries, like whatever. And a bunch of my friends came, and it was just fun to like all hang out. There was no birthday decorations or anything. It was just like, let's all get together. So I guess that's technically like my new tradition of just like, you know, celebrating with people I love and not doing anything crazy. Just kind of like, hey, come, you know, share a meal with me or like have a drink with me and just like hang out.
Beautiful. I love that. I love to hear about you celebrating yourself. You'll have to keep us posted if you do some kind of darker or funeral theme. 4:30. Congrats again on your engagement. And thank you, Brenna, for being here and interviewing me. And I will be sure to put a link in the show notes to your awesome podcast, Real Fucking Talk, where you get real with people all the damn time.
Yes. And also for anyone who's listening, if my audio was not good, it is not Chelsea's fault. I do not have a mic, and Chelsea did ask me to get one. So this is not on Chelsea. This is on me.
Oh my gosh, bless. You're the best. This was so fun. Thanks, Brenna. You rock.
Thank you for having me. Love ya.
Yodo, you only die once.